I never thought opening a coffee shop in this neighborhood would cost me my peace of mind. But here I am, 3 months in, and I've learned that sometimes your dreams come with a price you never agreed to be. My name is Maya, and I'm a 28-year-old black woman who saved every penny for 5 years to open Brew and Soul on the corner of 5th and Madison. It wasn't the safest neighborhood, but the rent was affordable, and I believed, foolishly maybe, that good coffee and warm vibes could brighten even the darkest corners. The first time they came, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow day, only two customers nursing lattes by the window. The bell above my door chimed, and five guys walked in wearing matching red bandanas. The leader, a guy they called Demon, I wish I was making that up, had a scar running down his left cheek and eyes that looked like they'd never seen anything worth smiling about. "Nice place you got here," he said, running his finger along my counter, leaving a trail in the powdered sugar I'd been using for the pastries. "Real nice. Be a shame if something happened to it." My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. Um, can I get you gentlemen something to drink?" Demon laughed, and his crew joined in like a pack of hyenas. "Yeah, you can get us protection money. 500 a week, and we make sure nobody bothers you. Nobody breaks your windows. Nobody scares away your customers." "I don't have that kind of money," I said, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went pale. "I'm barely making rent." He leaned in close, and I could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne. "Then I guess you better figure it out, sweetheart. We'll be back Friday." They left, and I stood there shaking for a full 10 minutes. My two customers had already fled. I closed early that day and cried in my empty shop, surrounded by the dream I'd worked so hard to build. But I didn't pay them. I couldn't. I reported it to the police, and the officer who took my statement looked at me with pity and said, "Ma'am, we'll do what we can, but these gang situations, they're complicated. Just keep us informed." Keep them informed. As if that would protect me. They came back that Friday, and when I told Demon I didn't have the money, he smiled. Then he picked up one of my ceramic mugs, handmade from a local artist, and dropped it on the floor. It shattered into a dozen pieces. "Next time," he said, "it won't be just a mug." Over the next few weeks, it became a routine of terror. They'd show up randomly, sometimes twice a week, sometimes just once. They'd intimidate my customers, knock over chairs, accidentally break things. Demon seems to enjoy watching me flinch. One time, he poured an entire carafe of coffee on my floor just because I'd looked at him in the eye for a second too long. "You got spirit," he said that day. "I like that, but spirit don't pay bills, and it definitely don't keep you safe." I started sleeping poorly. Every sound at night made me jump. I'd lie awake wondering if they'd come back, if they'd finally make good on their threats to do something worse than break my property. I lost weight. My friends noticed, asked if I was okay. What could I say? That I was being terrorized by gang members and nobody could help me. I thought about closing the shop, about giving up and walking away from everything I'd worked for. But something in me, that same stubborn streak my grandmother always warned me about, refused to quit. This was my dream, my shop. I'd be damned if I let them take it from me. But by the third month, I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, financially. Every broken cup, every scared customer who never came back, every sleepless night, it was wearing me down to nothing. Then came that Wednesday. It started like any other day. I opened at 6 a.m., brewed my first batch of coffee, set out the pastries. By 8, I had my usual morning crowd. The construction worker who liked his coffee black and strong, the nurse coming off her night shift, the college student who spent hours on her laptop nursing a single cappuccino. And then he walked in. I noticed him immediately. And not just because he was gorgeous, though Lord he was. Tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair styled perfectly, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly revenue. But it wasn't his looks that made me pause. It was the way he carried himself, the way every person in the coffee shop seemed to unconsciously shift when he entered, like planets adjusting to a sun's gravity. He had these intense dark eyes that swept the room once, cataloging everything before landing on me. When he smiled, it was slight, almost private, like he was amused by something only he understood. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound professional despite my heart doing something stupid in my chest. "What can I get you?" "Espresso," he said. His voice was deep, with the slightest accent I couldn't quite place. "Italian, maybe." "Double shot, and whatever pastry you recommend." "The almond croissant is fresh," I said, pulling his espresso shots. "Made them myself this morning." "Then I trust your judgment." Something about the way he said trust made my skin tingle. I handed him his order and our fingers brushed. His hands were strong, slightly calloused, not the hands of a man who just sat behind a desk. "Thank you, Maya," he said, reading my name tag. Then he found a table by the window, in the corner where he could see the entire shop and the street outside. He sat with his back to the wall. I tried not to stare, but I found myself glancing over every few minutes. He drank his espresso slowly, savoring it, occasionally looking at his phone, but mostly he watched the street, the shop, me. It was just after 9 when the bell chimed again and my stomach dropped. Demon walked in with 4 of his crew. They were laughing about something loud and obnoxious, and I felt that familiar fear clench around my heart. "Maya," Demon called out, like we were old friends. "How's my favorite coffee girl?" I was behind the counter and I gripped the edge again, that same desperate grip that had become my shield. "What do you want?" "That's not very friendly," he said, approaching the counter. His crew spread out, and I watched my customers start to gather their things, ready to flee. "Maya, Maya, Maya, I've been patient with you, real patient, but my patience is running out." One of his crew members, a skinny guy with a teardrop tattoo, started browsing my shelves, picking up bags of coffee beans like he was shopping. Then he dropped one. It burst open on the floor, beans scattering everywhere. "Oops," he said, grinning. "That's $60 worth of..." "What?" Demon cut me off. "You're going to call the cops? We both know how that worked out last time. They don't care about you, sweetheart. This neighborhood, you're on your own." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not again. "Please," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Just leave. Just let me run my business." "Your business?" Demon laughed. "Nah, see? You're confused. This is our neighborhood. Everything here, it's under our protection. And you either pay for that protection or what?" The voice came from the corner. Deep, calm, deadly. Everyone turned. The man in the suit hadn't moved from his seat, but somehow he seemed to fill the entire room. He took a slow sip of his espresso, set it down gently, and finally stood. When he stood, it was like watching a predator unfold. Casual, unhurried, but unmistakably dangerous. "Who the hell are you?" Demon demanded, but I heard something new in his voice. Uncertainty. The man buttoned his suit jacket, one button, with the kind of precision that suggested ritual. Then he walked toward us, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "I'm a customer," he said simply, "enjoying an excellent espresso, and you're disturbing my morning." Demon tried to laugh it off. "Man, you better mind your business before..." "Before what?" 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words, delivered with such quiet, absolute authority that Demon actually took a step back. The man stopped a few feet from Demon. Up close I could see he was older than I'd first thought. Maybe late 30s. But age had only sharpened him, like a blade honed over time. "You should leave," he said. "Now." "Do you know who we are?" Demon tried to puff up, but it was like a house cat trying to intimidate a lion. This is Crimson territory. We run. I know exactly who you are. He interrupted. His voice never rose, never wavered. Your children playing dress up. And you're bothering this woman who's done nothing but try to build something honest in a neighborhood that desperately needs it. One of Demon's crew moved toward the man, trying to get in his face. The man didn't even look at him. He just shifted his stance slightly, and somehow the crew member stopped. Like he'd walked into an invisible wall. Let me make this very simple, he continued. His eyes locked on Demon. You're going to walk out of this shop. You're going to leave this woman alone. Forever. And you're going to spread the word that this establishment is under protection. Your protection? Demon scoffed, but his hands were fidgeting now. Man, who do you think? Luca Marchesi. He said his name like it was a fact of nature, like saying gravity or death. And I watched Demon's face go white. Oh shit, one of the crew members whispered. Even I, who knew nothing about this world, felt the weight of that name. It hung in the air like thunder before a storm. There's been a misunderstanding, Demon said. His entire demeanor transformed. We didn't know, nobody told us. Now you know. So what are you still doing here? They ran. Not walked, ran. Demon and his entire crew scrambled over each other trying to get out of my coffee shop, and the bell above the door chimed cheerfully as they fled into the street. The silence they left behind was deafening. I stood there, shaking, unable to process what had just happened. My remaining customers were staring. Luca Marchesi turned back to me, and his expression softened into something almost gentle. Are you all right? My voice cracked. Who are you? He smiled, sad and knowing. Someone who appreciates good coffee. May I finish mine? He returned to his table, sat down, and picked up his cup like he'd just stepped out for a breath of fresh air, not stared down 5 gang members with nothing but his presence. I should have been terrified. I should have called the police. I should have done 100 things that a rational person would do. Instead, I walked out from behind my counter, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down. Luca Marchesi. That name scared them more than any weapon could. Names have power. In my world, reputation is everything. Your world. The mafia. He didn't deny it, just studied me with those dark eyes, waiting to see what I would do with that information. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman, he corrected. The nature of my business is complicated, but I've never once in my life harmed someone who didn't deserve it, and I've never tolerated predators who prey on the innocent. Why did you help me? He was quiet for a moment, turning his espresso cup in his hands. When I walked in this morning, I saw a woman who was tired but still fighting, still showing up, still making beautiful kings despite everything trying to tear her down. That's rare. That deserves protection. I don't need protection, I said, even though we both knew it was a lie. I don't need someone to fight my battles. No, he agreed. You need someone to make sure you don't have to fight them in the first place. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him I could handle it myself, that I didn't need some mafia boss swooping in like a dark night. But God, I was so tired. 3 months of fear, of looking over my shoulder, or wondering when they'd finally make good on their threats. And this man, this dangerous, beautiful man, had made it stop with just his name. What happens now? I asked. Now? Luca finished his espresso. Now you go back to making your excellent coffee, and those boys never bother you again. Word will spread. This shop, you, are under my protection. Nobody will touch you. Why? I pressed. You don't know me. Why would you do this? He stood, pulled out his wallet, and left $300 bills on the table, absurdly more than his order cost. Because, he said, I've spent my entire life in darkness, Maya, and when you find a light, you protect it. Then he walked to the door, stopped, turned back. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, if you'll have me. It wasn't a threat, it was a question, an invitation for me to choose. And as I watched him leave, watched him disappear into a black car that materialized at the curb like it had been waiting, I realized something terrifying. I wanted him to come back. He did come back. The next day, same time, same order. Good morning, Maya. Morning. We didn't talk much that first week. He'd come in, order his double espresso and whatever pastry I recommended, sit in his corner and work on his phone. But his presence filled the shop. Other customers noticed the way he carried himself, the deference others showed him when they recognized who he was. My business actually picked up. People felt safer. Word had gotten out that Luca Marchesi frequented Brew and Soul, and in this neighborhood, that meant something. On Friday, a week after the incident, he stayed until closing. You don't have to babysit me, I said, wiping down tables while he sat there, still nursing his third espresso of the day. I'm not babysitting, he said. I'm enjoying the atmosphere and the company when she has time to talk. I tried to hide my smile. I have a business to run. I know. I've been watching you work all week. You're good at this. The way you remember everyone's orders, how you make people feel welcome. This place is special because you're special. I stopped wiping and looked at him. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because I struggled for words. Because you're you and I'm me, and this doesn't make sense. Luca stood, walked to where I was standing, and gently took the rag from my hands. He was close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and cedar-like. What doesn't make sense? He asked quietly. This, I gestured between us. You're a mafia boss. I'm a coffee shop owner. You're dangerous. I'm just trying to make it. You think I don't know that? His voice was rough now, emotional. You think I don't know that I should walk away? That I should leave you to your safe, normal life? Then why don't you? Because I can't, he admitted. Because I walked in here 2 weeks ago, planning to grab a quick coffee, and instead I found you. And I haven't been able to think about anything else since. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might break through my chest. Luca, he continued, I know what I am. I know the darkness I carry. But Maya, when I'm here with you, I remember what it feels like to be human, to want something pure and good. You make me want to be better. I'm not some redemption project, I whispered. No, he agreed. You're extraordinary, and I'm selfish enough to want to be near you anyway. Consequences be damned. I should have stepped back, should have created distance, should have protected myself. Instead, I reached up and touched his face. His jaw was strong under my palm, rough with 5 o'clock shadow. This is crazy, I said. Yes. You're a criminal. Yes. I could get hurt. You could get hurt. Yes. But you're still going to come back tomorrow. He turned his head slightly, kissed my palm. Yes. And I'm going to let you. God, I hope so. We stood there in my empty coffee shop, surrounded by the smell of coffee beans and possibility, and I made a choice. Maybe it was the wrong choice. Maybe it was dangerous and reckless and everything I'd spent my life avoiding. But when Luca Marchesi looked at me like I was something precious, like I was worth protecting and cherishing and fighting for, I couldn't bring myself to care about the danger. I kissed him. Or he kissed me. I'm still not sure who moved first. But suddenly his hands were in my hair and my arms were around his neck, and we were kissing like we were drowning and each other was air. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against mine. This changes everything, he whispered. I know, I whispered back. I'll protect you, always, no matter what. I know. But my world, it's dangerous, Maya. There are people who would hurt you to hurt me. I pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. Then I guess you'd better teach me how to be strong enough to stand beside you instead of behind you. He smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. You're already the strongest person I know.